I'll apply a drop of acetone to that label. Hopefully it'll get down under that edge. Be careful when you're splashing acetone around. You do not want to get any on the paint, or especially don't get any on the leatherette. That'll be the kiss of death. Put another drop there. I'll get some wooden toothpicks and poke at that, I think, see if I can loosen it up. I can see some flecks in it, but not much. Let's hope it's not being glued down with epoxy. Certainly some flecks there. I can see movement right the way down the trim. It's not coming loose in a hurry. That is not exactly rattling loose. I might try warming that up with a hairdryer, see if I can get it to lift slightly back when I have an answer. Well, I heated it up quite warm with the hairdryer. I've got movement all the way along that top edge by the looks of it, but it must be glued fairly solidly in this area. But I have to say it's not enthusiastic about coming loose. Oh, hang on, there we go. It's starting to lift. Do you see that? I press on there, it's lifting at the bottom. I think that's going to come loose now. Now I can just pick that up with the edge of my scalpel, I think, and lift that up. There we go. That's it. So that's quite a rubbery adhesive. It looks much like the stuff I use, but it certainly didn't soften to the extent I would expect it to. On the other one, I think I'll try something else. I'll try some CRC Lectraclean, see if that will get in underneath and soften that adhesive. Can you see any of that? Yeah, you just about can. Come on camera, keep up. There's the back of the label. So that's label number 1. Now all I need to do is get off label number 2. So here I've just followed the same course really, except I'm using CRC Lectraclean, which is good for softening that type of adhesive. And I'm hopefully seeing some flecks in that nameplate. I'm trying to see if I can shuffle it backwards and forwards to break that bond. It's not looking particularly hopeful. Just pressing on it. There's a very slight mark on the plate at that stage where somebody's had an edged tool under it to lift it. What I'm looking for is some flecks in this, which will tell me that it's loose from underneath and that solvent could get in underneath and loosen it further. And I'm not seeing anything. So I'm going to have a go with the heat gun on this one too, see if I can get that to soften the adhesive. I think that's softened up. I'm just going to try the edge of my scalpel blade, see if that will shift this at all. Not seeing any action at all. Yeah, I'm starting to see a bit of flex at this end. Of course, none of this would have been necessary when the cameras were comparatively new, like in their first couple of decades of life, and spare parts were, yeah, that definitely moved. It's going to lift. And spare parts were readily available. It wouldn't have been a problem. You would have just ordered new labels and installed them. We're under it. That is very tight. That is glued down really, really well. That label's not lifting off flat, it's bending up. There we go. Well, they'd certainly done a job of gluing that thing down. That's a huge glob of adhesive for such a tiny label. I think that'll be fine. I think that'll flatten out well enough. It'll be, those will both be fine once they're back together. Look at the state of this. That's a huge glob of adhesive. That was not in a hurry to come loose. Anyway, we're where we needed to be. So we can remove these two screws. Lift off the front plate. And I think I can get to the leatherettes directly there. I'll take this plate out. these screws are, some of these screws are wrong. We have 4 screws here. 2 of them are one size and 2 of them are the other. That won't have been right. So someone's been in here this far before. Right, see if this will lift out. It does. Okay. So there's our rack that drives the shaft that couples directly to the shutter, and our shutter cocking rack from the top of the camera couples into it at this point. There's our baffle that goes in the back, complete with a couple of marks from various tools. The body, well, mostly what I'm interested in here with the body is getting these leatherettes off, which I'm less enthusiastic about now that I've seen the adhesive they've used, so that I can glue them down firmly. And now you can see there's a crack all the way down the leatherette at that point and here. So it means that someone's made a bit of a mess of that. But the camera, the body is all apart. So let me look at these leatherettes. Will they lift? Possibly, but it'll be a fight all the way. I'm going to try some naphtha under here, see if that'll soften that adhesive. I can't use the other solvents, they're too aggressive. Yeah, it looks like it's going to do the job. There's a break in the leatherette there, I've got to be careful of that. Yeah, it's not moving quickly now. Yeah, under the leatherette here I can see that the adhesive's been softened by the naphtha. It's probably just going to pop straight off now. There we go. Here's our leatherette. Little bit of adhesive on the back. You can see the crack through it there. But we've got it off in one piece. So once that's cleaned, it'll go back on nicely and all this stuff can come off. Now I've got to do this side. This side's got a much more severe crack through it. There's actually a chip missing out of there. That's very likely to come off in more than one piece. I'll just soak some naphtha around the edges. It's very quiet outside today. It's because we're in lockdown. This is our 7th day of lockdown. The entire country is in level 4 lockdown, which basically means you can only leave the house for a limited number of reasons. One is if you're an essential worker, which would be the likes of anyone working in hospitals or police or the emergency services or various other things, communications, utilities like electricity, things like that, and supermarkets. People working in supermarkets are essential workers, and you can leave your home to go and shop for groceries. You can leave your home to seek medical attention, to visit a pharmacy, to buy petrol, I think, and also to exercise. You can leave your home to exercise in your neighbourhood. And as a rule of thumb, it means if you can walk there, you can go there for exercise. If you can't walk there, well, then you're going to have to come up with a strong argument as to why that's where you need to be. Anyway, after 6 days of lockdown, I'm tired of it. I got out yesterday for my exercise. I walked across the local golf course to the beach, walked down the beach and did some metal detecting. Not that I expected to find much, it's the wrong season. But I did come home with a bottle cap, 2 pull tabs, and somebody's car keys. So I'm fairly sure that some years ago somebody drove to the beach in their old Honda Civic and then had to walk home. So this is not the original adhesive by any means. These leatherettes have been off the camera before during a previous repair, and since you wouldn't need to take the leatherettes off the camera in order to repair the camera, it means that there was a problem with the leatherettes. It means that there was probably corrosion and that the leatherettes had stopped sticking correctly. Alright, that's good. As far as that goes, now I can clean that rubbish off there. All this old adhesive needs to come off. That's chipping away, that just scrapes away. What I'm scraping away there is probably the original adhesive with the newer stuff on the top. The original adhesive would have been quite brittle. The newer stuff is not. It's a flexible adhesive. If I can scrape it off like this, that's great. It'll save me any amount of time swabbing it with solvents trying to lift the glue. Now at this point there's none of the old adhesive, that's newer adhesive there, so it tells me that Leatherettes had lifted at this point before they were glued back down. The original adhesive had given up. Alright, we don't need to watch this, I'm just going to clean this mess away, get this body clean. The painted edge here, well there's obviously a missing piece of paint there at that point already. I think that's completely covered by the body, this piece of the body. I'm just going to check that. It is, so the paint on these edges is irrelevant. That's covered by this piece. So I can use some solvent to get all that adhesive off there. Back when I've got a clean camera body to work with. Well, I have the camera body clean now, free from all the old grease, the dirt, the adhesive and any other rubbish. But I've got to look at these Leatherettes. Now the two front Leatherettes I think we'll probably clean with Naphtha, and that's what I'll try first. The Leatherettes in the base of the camera have got something different on there. So I'll try this first. And really what I'm wanting to do is remove that old adhesive because it's coming loose in places and it's lumpy and bumpy, and so the Leatherettes will never stick down flat with those lumps on there. And it seems to be softening with the Naphtha, and I can rub it away. These Leatherettes will never look $1 million, but they'll look better than they did to start off with. So I think we can safely say the camera's received some attention at least twice before, because the Leatherettes on the base of the camera have been glued back in an entirely different fashion than the Leatherettes on the front of the camera. There were no repair labels inside the body, so there's no clues there as to when and where it was serviced. Well, that's looking quite good. Just a hard streak of something there. I've got to be quite cautious because the Leatherettes are fairly fragile. Let's cut that lump off there. That looks quite good. I'm pleased with the state of that. Let's have a look at its mate. That's not quite so tidy. Now I can see this had been cracked before it was glued back. It was glued back cracked, so the adhesive is present in the breaks in the leatherette, which will be the same when I glue it back too, I'd say. If I can rub that lump off there. Yeah, that's where the leatherette is damaged, and there's a little fleck missing from there. As to whether it's worth cutting in a patch for that bit of damage, I'll decide that once the leatherette's back on the camera. It's very difficult to make a patch disappear completely, so it becomes a balancing act as to whether you're going to make more of a mess trying to disguise a minor problem than the original problem. That's just some areas of adhesive there that were particularly well stuck. It probably means that it was well down into the fibres of the cloth. What's that little piece of cotton stuck on there? Nothing useful. Okay. Alright, so you can see we've got a crack here and there's a little piece of leatherette missing. There's a tiny chip of leatherette missing at that point too. But the leatherette's otherwise looking good. And that should glue down fine as well. It's not as pretty as its mate. And that's life as we know it. So this glue here, this is something else. It's white, slightly rubbery. Now the corrosion here, that powdery stuff will be corrosion, which suggests that this had some water content, this adhesive. I'm seeing how it scrapes away. I'll see if it moves with a bit of naphtha. I have my doubts. No, that's not exactly making any impression on it. I'll try a bit of methylated spirits. If it was something water soluble, this will probably dissolve it. And that's not really doing anything useful either. Well, that's about as much as I can try in the way of solvent. Just going to have to scrape this away now. And the problem with this adhesive is that it's very stiff, so that means the leatherettes won't lie down flat unless they were already flat, and the edges were a little bit curled up. Well, they will stay that way unless I can get rid of all this adhesive. Basically, I'm just going to have to chip that stuff away until I get that down to the leatherette below. Some of it's coming off. I won't make you watch all this. Well, as you can see, I'm getting there. It's just a very tedious process. I can only work at this speed. Shifting that dried, caked on adhesive and rubbish off the leatherette.